Our speaker is Anna Romanowicz from Jagiellonian University, Poland. Today, she presents her talk on the topic Love in the Indian Urban Middle Class. Anna Romanowicz is a social anthropologist interested in social class analysis. She works at the Institute of Ethnology and Cultural Anthropology of Jagiellonian University in Krakow, Poland. She was also a chair of the International Convention of Asia Scholars Dissertation Award. Her area of research interest is intimate relationships among the Indian urban middle class. She explores the transition of intimate relationships in India from arranged marriages to relationships emphasizing romantic love. This project is sponsored by the grant of the Polish National Science Center. Today, she will give a talk on the topic Love in the Indian Urban Middle Class.
Thank you very much for this introduction, and I hope to get the feedback from you too. Let me start from saying that I'm very grateful for this opportunity to share my research with you today. And I also believe that my presentation can be seen as actually an evaluation of a few issues that the keynote speaker just talked about, just in the Indian context. So I'm a social anthropologist, and let me just, because I forgot to do a presenter's view. Yeah, no, it works. So I'm a social anthropologist, and I'm interested in social class, basically. In my current research project, I focus on intimate relationships of urban Indian middle class. In India, the scholarly focus is actually on marriages, and there is absolutely no surprise about this when we think of the fact that the institution of marriage remains nearly universal here, with only 1 to 2% of the population having never been married by the age of 45 to 49. However, scholars have also pointed to certain transformation happening. This is a transformation from so-called arranged to so-called love marriages, a transformation that takes place primarily among middle class. Of course, in addition to marriages in my fieldwork, I also encounter many informal relationships organized around romantic love or around lack of romantic love, actually, such as dating, live-in relationships, or friends with benefits, and so on. So to encompass all of these relationships, I actually use the term intimate relationships. So very briefly, let me tell you a few words about my fieldwork. I conduct my research in the middle-class colonies of Delhi and Mumbai. I do my research in person and online. I include data which I gathered since 2007, although this project formally started with grants awarded by the Polish National Science Center in 2017 and 2020. I conduct participant observation and in-depth interviews, and I will be happy to answer any questions about my research methods in Q&A session. For now, let me just turn to my research participants. They are English-speaking, well-educated, and white-collar workers. So that's the first thing. They are also from their mid-20s to their mid-40s. They differ in many aspects. So first, they come from different regions. They are of various religious backgrounds and different castes. What they have in common, actually, is their middle class belonging and perceiving themselves as a middle class as well. So you should, however, also note here that they are very specific fraction of Indian middle class. As you can see on this slide, this is how the contrast appears with the majority of Indian population. So my research participants declare themselves to be non-religious, in contrast to 97% of Indians. They also very often travel for pleasure. They live in urban areas. They use internet daily. They own a personal computer, and only 24% of Indians do. They also regularly eat out and regularly consume alcohol, and this is in a country when 77% of young Indians apparently have never tasted alcohol. So this is just to show how, let's say, special this fraction of middle class is. During my research, I encountered certain models of relationships that my research participants narrated to me, and I'm sure you are very well aware of this so-called models. So first one is love marriage. Love marriage is seen by my research participants as some kind of a desire and aspiration. It is considered to be modern. It is considered to be contractual. It is love marriage, as the name suggests. So one just falls in love. It just happens. Love marriage, what is important in the context of my research, is considered to be more equal. It is more equal because it is based on individual choice. And this individual choice is very often emphasized. So much so that the different model of relationship, arranged marriage, is perceived as by total contrast to love marriage, just because it is, or mostly because it is not based on individual choice. It is considered to be based on family choice. It's also seen as more traditional, sometimes as something that is a last resort. So if I won't find a partner for myself, then I might go for an arranged marriage. My respondents also talk about hybrid forms, which are arranged come love marriage and love come arranged marriage, and informal relationships, which I mentioned in the beginning of this presentation. So what do scholars say about all of this? Scholars say that it is complicated. It is complicated as in there are varieties of social practices that cannot be easily fit into these existing models. So most commonly, the scholars who work in India refer to the continuum from arranged to love marriage, the continuum which sometimes it's even seen as some kind of evolution towards the quote being modern. So in research practice, the focus here is on assessing the nature of choice. For example, if a scholar determines that there is less social and family influence in a choice she's examining, she then places this particular relationship closer to love marriage on the continuum. So an example of this kind of approach can be Ravinder Kaur and Priti Danda research in online matchmaking practices. And these researchers pose two major research questions. First is, are marriages in India moving towards individualism, choice, and equality? And the second one, has matchmaking agency shifted substantially from parents to marrying individuals? And for them, arranged marriages are endogamous with class. What this means is that because the family makes the decision, it signifies lack of individualism, and therefore we can talk about reproduction of family social position. So love marriages are based, by contrast, on self-choice, and they are distinct because they allow individuals to challenge traditional marriage and pursue a vision of more egalitarian marriage. So as an anthropologist using participant observation, I found it very difficult to determine the nature of choice in the relationships of my research participants. So I argued that there is an alternative approach needed. For example, over the years, I have observed the relationship of Anita and Rahul. In the beginning, they claimed that they did not intend to marry, and they opted, based on their individual choice, to be in an informal relationship. If, as a researcher, I had attempted to determine the nature of their choice, I could not detect any distinct social or family influence. So I have decided to label their choice as individual. However, later on, Anita and Rahul decided to get married for so-called practical reasons of renting a place together. This time, as a researcher, I could have easily identified societal pressure based on the couple's declarations. So I have placed their relationship a bit further from love relationship of this continuum mentioned a moment ago. Finally, however, Anita and Rahul's parents opposed the marriage, and the couple postponed the ceremony until they received their parents' approval. So again, as a researcher, I could have then moved the relationship even closer to an arranged marriage in this continuum. However, what's very important to me is that through all these years, Anita and Rahul always refer to the decisions as individual decisions, or as their individual choices. So the problems which I have encountered here as this anthropologist doing in ethnography was, first of all, how do I assess social versus individual choice? So how much actually influence of parents, let's say, for example, I have to encounter or identify to render a choice to be a non-individual choice. Second problem was who chooses, whose choice is individual. So there's inherent power relation, right, between the researcher and myself and my respondents. I hold my own images of what constitutes pure individualism, right? So should I prop my respondents' declarations against my own imaginaries? I think there's always a risk of bias. Finally, if there is any choice, is there any choice made in social vacuum? One could argue that if the marriage is not a forced marriage, then ultimately all choices are made by individuals, even if this is a choice to follow family and friends' wishes and expectations. So what to do in a situation like that? In my fieldwork, I just changed the research question. Instead of trying to assess the character of choice, I ask why practically all my respondents talk about individual choice, why they so often emphasize it. So to answer this question, I looked at the fact that my participants were born, raised, and lived in the times of economic transformation in India. This transformation was from state welfareism to neoliberalization. These are both so-called by Satish Deshpande, Indian sociologist, models of development. In the previous one, in the state welfareism, a middle class was envisioned to lead the nation. And Deshpande says that in the current model of development, neoliberalism, middle class is again envisioned to lead the nation. The difference is how this leading the nation is supposed to take place. So in the state welfareism, there were noble virtues of the middle class, with austerity and self-restraint that were applauded. However, in neoliberal times, this noble virtue of middle class is supposed to be personal success, which is defined in terms of individual achievements and individual consumption capacity. This is very nicely put, I think, by Ardana Sharma, who says that this approach is inscribed in the logic of neoliberalism, which attempts to fashion self-regulating citizens who know how to function properly in a free market society. It aims to institute, maybe because I think I'm running out of time, so I'll just skip this, sorry. Right, so just to conclude quickly, I think that an emphasis of individual consumption and individual achievements in Indian context corresponds with the rise of so-called choice-based love relationships. So invoking this individual choice allows my research participants to present themselves as flexible individuals who are easily adaptable to the needs of neoliberal markets. Invoking this individual choice is also used for exclusion of lower class by my research participants. So I think that this rhetoric facilitates maintaining or improving their class position. And that means that not only love relationships, are about class reproduction. Maybe you can remind that Corindanda, whom I quoted before, said that only arranged marriages are about class reproduction. This was obviously rebuked by other scholars. However, what I mean here is that not only arranged marriages are about class reproduction, love marriages are also about class reproduction. But also what happens here in the neoliberalism, I think that this insistence of individual choice is actually a form of cultural capital. It's a long-lasting disposition of the mind and an attitude. So the popularity of the rhetoric of individual choice is not, as one could have expected, a strategy for social equality. I think in this case, both love and individual choice are strategies for social inequality. So thank you very much. And yeah, this is where you can find me online.
Yes.